Hi, my name's Adriana, and welcome to the rebirth of me being condescending towards my phone camera for like an hour. Hallelujah, I'm back. I don't have a good explanation as to why I stopped posting videos besides the fact that I went off to college and I have very poor time management skills. But I finished my first year of college, go orange, and I am back again with opinions that nobody asked for. I'm alive, which is good, but if I become lazy once again, which is more than likely, here are some of my social medias you can follow to keep updated on me and ensure that I continue to stay alive. Those will be found in the description if you want to look for them. Thank you. Shameless plug over, I'm back, and boy do I have a treat. I want to thank everyone for all the love I've received on this channel since going away, especially on my Ever High and Monster High videos. I didn't expect that so many people would be interested in Monster High and Ever After High, and I'm really happy to see that people enjoyed me reviewing those books and talking about them, since a lot of people didn't really know that they had books. Even though I look scuffed in both of those videos, they were still very fun to make and talk about, and I really do appreciate you guys for watching and giving me feedback on both of those. So, as a treat for my channel, what better than to talk about both Monster High and Ever After High in the same breath. After doing my video, a lot of you guys let me know that there are more Ever After High books than just the 3 that I read. So when I started doing my research on those books, which are school stories, I came across something different than the Ever After High trilogy that I read and school stories combined. Something bigger, something that I am very embarrassed to say that I did not know about until researching. I, of course, am talking about the crossover book between Monster High and Ever After High, The Legend of Shadow High. I want you all to stare at the cover of this thing because I am in genuine disbelief that this is a thing that I'm holding in my hand right now. The art on it is so cute. You see Raven and Apple and Frankie and Draculaura. It's a little scuffed at the top here, but that's what I get for trusting Jeff Bezos with literature. The respective logos are on the top with the tagline, Ever After High meets Monster High. I had no idea this book was a thing. I have been a devoted fan of both of these franchises since I was like 10 years old, and I had no idea a book like this existed. But it's real. Like, you can order it on Amazon. I probably got this for like 10 bucks. It's real. You can buy it right now. Before I can even get into the plot of this book, I have to talk about the implication of this being a book rather than a movie it was supposed to be. In their prime time, these two franchises were ridiculously popular. And being that they were both Mattel, a crossover seemed like a genius idea, if not something that was so obvious. It's not like these two series haven't been connected before. C.I. Cupid is a character that appears in both Monster High and Ever After High canon. Like, this character canonically went to Monster High, and then we can assume transferred to Ever After High somehow. It's never talked about. It's kind of a cheeky inside joke within the character that she's from both universes, and she doesn't tell anybody about this. Only we, the viewers, know that C.A. Cupid is from both Monster High and Ever After High. The respected characters within both of them have no idea that she's been dimension hopping, essentially. I mean, it makes sense. Fans of Monster High were likely to be fans of Ever After High, considering they were both Mattel and both kind of had the same premise to them. So capitalizing on a crossover between these two would have been genius, but there was a few roadblocks with both of these franchises, respectively. Let's jump back in time and reminisce about 2016. Not too hard, though, because yikes. 2016 was a weird year for Mattel in that they were kind of scrambling. And by scrambling, I mean horrendously fumbling the bag. A new reboot of Monster High was announced. When I was a kid, the reboot kind of came out of left field. I mean, if you look at their Instagram, there is a very dramatic shift from the old Monster High dolls we knew to these new ones. They start to look really different. And by different, I mean, I think they scrubbed some of the paint off Barbie dolls and changed the skin color and called it Monster High. I mean, look at these dolls. They're gross. They are not really pretty to look at. They are lame and lackluster, and it's kind of insulting to the original fans of Monster High that praised Mattel for the unique monster chic look that they had. My thoughts about these dolls aside, it's later announced that these designs are here to stay with the announcement of the new movie Welcome to Monster High. From there, the franchise essentially took a deep nosedive down into man-made obscurity, which they're trying to pull themselves out of in 2022, but that's a different discussion. The Monster High movies they had already were great. I mean, they were easily accessible on Netflix, they were fun. The 3D animation they used was like quirky and colorful, and the plots weren't half bad. The last movie in the first generation was The Great Scarier Reef, that came out in March 2016. And while I acknowledge that they couldn't keep doing movies forever considering this was the 13th one, I don't think Welcome to Monster High was the way to fix that. But I digress. We need to talk about what was happening with Ever After High in 2016. For Ever After High, it wasn't looking good either for the franchise. The series stopped putting out episodes, there was no new movies in sight, and there was no dolls in sight. Fans were starting to speculate if the series was canceled. A fan asked this on Twitter, and Mattel replied, no, Ever After High is not canceled. Wait for new updates in the future. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen. So of course, it's revealed years later that Ever After High is canceled and they really have no plans to bring the series back. So Ever After High is dead, Monster High is a shitty reboot that nobody likes, and it seems that these two franchises are just kinda at a stalemate. So what happens to the movie that was floating in speculation air? There was already rumors that Mattel was going to make a crossover movie between Monster High and Ever After High, but there was no real confirmation about it. So the movie is now referred to as The Lost Movie, and that isn't even a fan dub. Mattel themselves call the movie The Lost Movie. They posted voice storyboard clips to the Monster High YouTube channel, and we can kind of see what the plot of this movie would have been. These voice storyboards were released in May 2016, which is just a few months before the release of Welcome to Monster High in August 2016. So Mattel publishing these lost movie clips kind of just shows that the movie is lost, dead, the project's over, and we're never really gonna get this crossover movie. I'm surprised they released these clips. I feel like it just made fans more disappointed that we're never gonna see this movie air. I don't know if they gave up on the movie, I don't know if they knew Ever After High was tanking and they just decided to scrap it all together, but them posting these clips, dubbing them lost clips, proved that it was never going to be a thing. I remember seeing those clips and just being so sad. It was really upsetting. I feel like a lot of fans would have absolutely adored the movie. It would have gained such traction, which is why it's really weird to me that this is a thing and I have it in my hands right now. The Legend of Shadow High is written by Shannon Hale, the woman that wrote that Ever After High trilogy that I reviewed. It's also worked on by her husband, Dean Hill, who co-writes it and actually co-writes a lot of her books, which is really cute. I wish I had some information or history on how the fuck this was made and why. This is probably the last Ever After High content media we ever get, and it's a book. It's not a show or episode, it's not a movie, it's not a last toy line, it's a book. A book that I didn't even know about, so I can't even imagine if any of y'all have heard about it. But of course, I got my hands on it, I read it, and I'm going to tell you the plot of The Legend of Shadow High. The book starts with Frankie and Draculaura, and it's quickly revealed that these are the lame versions of them, the loser versions of them. Yes, this is Frankie and Draculaura from the second generation movie, Welcome to Monster High, and not the original girls that we know. The changes because of this are minor, just in the fact that they founded Monster High and stuff like that, but otherwise their characters are kind of the same. It just still irks something in my core. The girls do a school project on Monster High, which is something that they invented and created, so I don't think they should have been able to do a school project on it, but whatever. The project goes awry and they essentially endanger their other classmates. The teacher tells them that they have to pick something else to write about. The project is supposed to be about a high school. The girls really don't want to do a project on the normie high school, which is the other high school they know about, so they try their hardest to find another school they could possibly do this research on. In Dracula's collection, they find a book referring to something called Shadow High. Whenever they ask other monsters about it, they kind of hear this like plop plop sound in the distance. The monsters get distracted and basically can't explain what Shadow High is and can't even really think about it for too long. We get explained what that plop plop is by our narrator, Brooke Page, which I'm so excited that her character comes back Brooke Page is a reoccurring character in Monster High in that she essentially narrates the story, and sometimes she doesn't do a good job, or sometimes she interferes too much and she'll get scolded by her parents for it. Basically, the plot device is something that our parents are using so that none of the characters talk about Shadow High or even think about it. Brooke is confused, wants to know what Shadow High is, so kind of lets the characters continue to try to find more about it. Frankie and Draculaura use the map that they use in the Welcome to Monster High movie, which is essentially a map that has all the monsters in the world, and if they just say the monster that they want, they can find them and be transported to them. It doesn't really work when they try to use it for Shadow High, as it caused a massive earthquake within the school. We then cut to the evil queen, Raven's mom, contemplating how to get out of her mirror prison. She even feels the earthquake tremor from her mirror and gets confused as to how something was able to travel to her mirror dimension, considering she's in a mirror. The earthquake actually caused a small crack in the mirror dimension, which of course she uses to escape. We cut to Raven and Apple in Ever After High when the earthquake happened. Baba Yaga, one of the faculty members in Ever After High, tries to use a spell to discover why the earthquake happened. It works, and she basically says the word Shadow High out loud and then faints, wakes up, and says she has no idea what Shadow High is and everyone should get back to work. Raven tells Apple about this when she sees her later in the day, and they just talk about how weird it is. As they're talking, Raven sees a woman that has the same posture as her mother, and she thinks that this woman is her mother that escaped the mirror realm somehow. It's just a really funny scene. Raven's just like, Apple, no one else stands like my mother. Look at that woman. She's standing exactly like my mother. Look at her posture. It's just like my mother's. It has to be my mother. Apple dismisses her because of course she does. The strange woman that stands just like her mother goes into the library and disappears. Raven and Apple go after her. They don't find the old woman, but they do find a room full of books, like history books. The history books talk about, of course, fairy tale characters, but it also talks about the histories of some monsters. As Raven and Apple are investigating the books this woman left behind, the best character in Ever After High walks in. Of course, I'm talking about Madeline Hatter, who steals the show every time, and I want to personally thank Shannon Hale for her characterization of her. It's perfect, and it's everything I've ever wanted out of Maddie. Maddie essentially tells the girls to stop doing what they're doing because the narrator, who Maddie can hear, tells them to stop. It's revealed that the old woman is the evil queen because God, who else would stand like that? We cut back to her and we see what happens before Apple and Raven walk into the room she was in. She essentially discovers Monster High and thinks it's like a pseudonym for Shadow High, so she transports herself there and tries to take over the monsters. It doesn't really work because I assume these kids see weirder things before 5th period, so they all kind of just walk away and go to class. We cut back to Frankie and Draculaura just before the evil queen gets to Monster High, and they sneak into the mad science laboratory to try to use the electricity to strengthen the magical map that they have. It works a little too well, and they ask the map to transport them to the principal of Ever After High, which is of course Headmaster Grimm. Frankie and Draculaura manage to steal the entire student body of Ever After High because they are in fact monsters, and to the Ever After High kids, monsters aren't supposed to be real. Headmaster Grimm's solution to this is locking the girls up until he can figure out what to do with them. Even in the last piece of Ever After High media, Headmaster Grimm shows that he is the worst principal ever and should not have that job. Apple and Maddie are essentially tasked with looking over the monsters and making sure that they don't leave, and Raven joins them eventually. All the girls finally meet Frankie and Apple and Draculaura and Raven, and Maddie's there because of course she is. Deserves to be, okay? In the monster world, fairy tales aren't real, and in the fairy tale world, monsters aren't weird. So it's kind of a shell shock for each of these characters to see each other. The girls start to get along, with Raven and Draculaura bonding over their goth chic, and Frankie and Apple just kind of being standoffish towards each other. Raven's suspicions that her mother escaped are in fact true when she checks the mirror world and sees that her mother is indeed not there. Everyone starts to put 2 and 2 together and realizes that if Frankie and Draculaura are here, then her mother is probably in Monster High. We meet Monica, which is apparently an antagonist in the 2nd generation Monster High movies. She's not really that important in the book, but I did have to Google her when I read the name because I haven't seen Welcome to Monster High, and I don't think I ever want to. Monica teams up with the evil queen because of course they do. They find the mapalog and learn more about Shadow High. They also find a scroll which is pretty faded but reveals that there is a way to get to Shadow High. This scroll is is from the Lost Library, and that's where these two head off next. Brooke is panicking in the footnotes, which, by the way, she talks in footnotes whenever a character or something happens. She makes a little footnote about it at the bottom of the page and does a quip or explains more, and it's really cute and it is so engaging to read. Brooke panics in the footnotes because, oops, her parents warned her that this would happen and she didn't listen, but she has to continue the story anyway. The girls all sleep in Headmaster Grimm's office because he didn't let them out. They have a little mini sleepover, and when they wake up, they find that Maddie is missing. The troll statue in Headmaster Grimm's room tells them that she was kidnapped by a thing. When they go searching for her, they find that a fog has surrounded the entirety of Ever After High and all the faculty are missing. Kitty Cheshire, the daughter of the Cheshire Cat, says that she saw Maddie being kidnapped because they kind of needed her weirdness and her knowledge of magic. Kitty was able to escape because she's the Cheshire Cat and she can teleport anywhere. Kitty describes the kidnappers as zombies, and Frankie and Draculaura know who did it right away. They explain that it's Monica and her weird gangle of zombie boys. They call themselves the Zomboys. Frankie is mad that Draculaura and Raven get along so well because Apple is basically a bitch to her. She keeps making it extremely obvious that Frankie is a freak and a monster and that nobody likes her, and Frankie starts to get increasingly mad about this. Raven casts a spell to try and find Maddie, and with Frankie's extensive knowledge of engineering and electricity, the spell is even stronger, and the girls head out into the fog to try to find Madeline. The girls walk through the fog, and as they do, they find that all the magic in Raven is stripped. Even though her magic doesn't work, her imagination does. Raven explains that her mother, the evil queen, put them into this situation because she's evil and not a good person. Frankie, the master of subtlety, asks Raven, "Does your mother love you?" I'm not kidding. She says that. I can pull the quote up right now. Listen to this. Frankie says, and I quote, "Even though she's technically evil, does your mom still love you?" You can't say things like that, Frankie. What the fuck? Because of this, Raven tries to imagine a nice version of her mother, and she appears in front of the girls. Apple, in turn, does not remember the evil queen like that and imagines her to be even scarier, thus creating an evil, scarier evil queen that chases the girls. In the last page of the chapter, Brooke Page explains in the footnotes that this place is actually the margin, something that exists between stories. This part's my favorite. It's really on the nose with the characters. Just listen to this. The girls decide to rest and sleep, and Frankie's the only one that doesn't end up falling asleep. Frankie then witnesses the nightmares that her friends are starting to have. Because nightmares are technically imagination, they start becoming true, and Frankie is able to witness the nightmares of all of her friends. Draculaura dreams that all of her friends eventually won't like her and leave her, and Apple imagines her mother very disappointed in her. Shannon Hale really lays it on thick with these characters, and I appreciate that. Frankie saves Dracula and Apple, and of course they still have to get Raven, which I can only imagine the nightmares this girl must have. Jesus Christ. And of course I'm correct. Raven imagines her mother throwing fireballs at her and essentially trying to burn her alive. The three girls come in and tell her to imagine something else, but Raven physically can't because she doesn't have a good memory or any good perspective of her mother. Therefore, when she tries to think of a good version of her mother, she can't. It's physically not possible for her. Like I said, Shannon Hale really lays it on thick. They escape by imagining how Maddie would fix the situation, which of course is genius, and they run off. They find the lost library and run into the Zomboys. The evil queen enchanted them so that you can't really hurt them unless you fight them and really do damage to them. And like Frankie tells us, zombies are people too, so the girls can't really attack them. They are ultimately pushed back to the margins by the zombies. Find out that the evil queen kidnapped Maddie because in the beginning of the book, when the evil queen was disguised, Maddie essentially came up to her and was telling her all the things the narrator was saying. So the evil queen basically learns that there are narrators and that they are narrating everyone's every move. She doesn't like this, so she kidnaps Maddie to try to learn more about the narrators and what they're even saying. Too bad that Maddie is the most annoying hostage, and the only information you can really get out of her is Brooke's name. The evil queen decides that that's enough to work with. The girls best Monica and the Zomboys by switching places with them, leaving the zombies in the margins, and having the girls go up to the library. Maddie is rescued by Draculaura, and they go with Raven to go confront her mother. The evil queen is under the impression that the narrators control her somehow, and this now becomes her main focus. She wants to stop the narrators, and she assumes that they as characters don't have autonomy because the narrators are telling their story. Brooke tries to explain in the footnotes that this isn't what's happening, but she really doesn't know herself. The evil queen tells Draculaura that the narrators are probably responsible for ostracizing monsters and making everybody hate them and fear them, which really gets under Draculaura's skin, and she kind of starts to believe the evil queen. The girls can't stop her, and the evil queen's spell works. This spell is complete, and the key to Shadow Island is a chisel. Shadow High is revealed along with the island that Shadow High is on, which has a volcano that starts to erupt. The evil queen realizes, hey, maybe I fucked up and we're all gonna die. What ends up happening is that whenever the lava touches something, that thing essentially becomes unmade. And by unmade, I mean it turns into words. So like if a shoe lands in the lava, it stops becoming a shoe and it's just the word shoe. The lava is basically unraveling every single part of the story. Brooke's parents explain what Shadow High is and how the characters are all doomed now because the evil queen just doesn't know when to quit. Basically, all stories live together, and they're birthed by magic from the first story that was ever created by the first ever author, narrator. There was trouble with the narrators because they didn't really agree on how to control the characters or how to tell their stories. Some narrators thought that the characters should just be doing the same story over and over again, and they just retell that story over and over again. Some narrators think that the characters should have autonomy and that they shouldn't be controlled, but rather that the narrator should just describe what these characters are doing. A narrator named Misdirection said, screw that, these characters are my playthings and I should do whatever I want with them. She essentially creates a school that teaches narrators how to control characters and unmake their stories and remake them in whatever shape they want. The magic was so powerful that it starts unmaking the narrator, Misdirection, along with the school and everything on it. In order to save the islands and the stories, they basically had to separate all the stories from each other, which is why Monster High and Ever After High are in two separate universes. They couldn't be together, and if they were together, then the stories would be unmade and there would be no stories at all. The chisel that the evil queen thought was a key is basically what was keeping the islands from being apart and keeping Shadow High dormant. And of course, the evil queen essentially rips it out of the ground and destroys everything. The gang run to Shadow High to try to stay alive because Shadow High is somehow not being unmade by all the lava around it, because I think it was already unmade in the past and now it's just this permanent structure. The gang meets Misdirection, or rather the leftover corpse of Misdirection. This woman essentially is just words. Her eyebrows aren't eyebrows, it's just the word eyebrow. Her hair isn't hair, it's just words, hair. It is a terrifying description, but I digress. Misdirection doesn't really care that other stories are being unmade because she has story characters right here that she can control. She forces all the characters to sit down and do nothing, and Brooke Page freaks the fuck out. Brooke Page, against the wishes of her parents, inserts herself into the story. Brooke stops narrating our main characters and runs through the land of narration to climb the fourth wall. And the fourth wall is a literal wall she has to climb, which is a very cute detail. Brooke does something that I did not expect her to do, but it was really cool and a really different direction than what I thought this book was going. Brooke essentially calls upon the reader to come help, because essentially narrators and characters aren't anything without the reader. So chapter 27 of this book is essentially a choose your own adventure. It's really cute. It's in the same style of traditional choose your own adventures, where if you want a certain character to be the one to save everybody, you go to a certain page and you follow those choices. It's cute. I really wasn't expecting a choose your own adventure. I mean, it really doesn't do anything, and it's more like a cheeky nod to the reader trying to insert themselves into the story and making up the story as they go along. The choose your own adventure doesn't really work, and it's up to the reader to choose and decide what the characters do next in order for them to get away from Misdirection. There's little pages that you can fill in to write your own version of what happens and how the characters escape Misdirection, and that's really cute. I mean, I didn't do it, but if I was probably 14 reading this, hell yeah, I would have sat down and write a way for all the characters to escape. That's such a cool idea, and it's so interactive, and it really shows the point they're trying to make, that the narrators and characters are nothing without the reader. Thanks to the reader and whatever solution they choose, or whatever solution I choose, I suppose, the girls are able to escape and run to the volcano. What happens next is a tone that I was not expecting this book to take. Raven is about to do it, and she tries to cast a spell in order to get the chisel back in the volcano and separate all the islands and get all the stories away from each other once again. The evil queen keeps asking Brooke what's gonna happen to Raven, and it's revealed that the original narrator that separated the islands and separated the stories died because of his sacrifice. It's a really chilling moment because the evil queen keeps begging Brooke to tell them what's gonna happen, but she kind of already knows. Raven turns to her mother and says, "I love you. Be good," and attempts to put the chisel back in the volcano and sacrifice herself. Her mother doesn't let her though, and takes the chisel from her and switches places with her. The evil queen essentially tells her daughter that this is a mother's job and that she loves her daughter and she doesn't want her to sacrifice herself for this. She wants a future where her daughter can continue her own story in whatever way she wants her to. The evil queen puts the chisel back where it belongs and dies, essentially. Even though she doesn't really die, it's implied in the end of the book that she's fine, but still, wow! Wow, is this scene dark and very emotional. Raven is left with the emotion of, wow, my mother did love me this whole time, so much so that she would sacrifice herself for me. Even though throughout the whole book, Raven battles with herself if her mother even loves her. I mean, her mother's evil. Her mother wants her to be evil. Does she really love her and care for her? And it's revealed that at the end of the day, her mother is her mother. And she loves her, so much so that she would sacrifice herself to protect her daughter and her friends. The girls separate, and Raven and Apple tell the monsters that they will have many more adventures to come, unfortunately. But the same isn't said for Raven and Apple, which truly shows that this is the last piece of Ever After High media we're ever gonna get, and that the story of Raven and Apple is done. It was really heartbreaking to read that. I was kind of choking up and tearing up a little bit. I mean, the scene where her mother sacrifices herself really didn't help, but you know, the girls go back to their respective schools and everything's okay. And that was The Legend of Shadow High. This book was amazing. This book was genuinely amazing, and I sit here so heartbroken that it's not a movie. This would have been an amazing movie. I mean, the way the characters interacted with each other, the way these two worlds collided. And after reading this book, I sit here with a very heartbroken feeling that this will never be a movie like it deserved to be. This was amazing, the way the monsters and the fairy tale girls interacted with each other. Frankie and Apple realizing that their differences aren't something that they should pit against each other, and that they can work together and overcome it and be friends. The inclusion of the narrators and how it was so interactive to the point that the readers can put themselves in the story and think of ways, creative different ways of how the girls escaped that situation. Brooke Page was amazing with like her little footnotes on each page. It just made it so engaging and it was so funny to read. Brooke Page was amazing with her little footnotes at the bottom of the pages, and it kept it so engaging. I don't know if kids are reading footnotes, but I did, and it made it so much more fun to read. I mean, Brooke being confused sometimes by what's going on and her saying that even she doesn't know what's going on. Brooke apologizing for sentences being too long, saying that she's new to this, she needs to graduate narration high and that she's working on it. It was so funny. I mean, this book is hilarious, surprisingly. The humor sometimes is so dry, which makes the quips from the girls so funny, and I genuinely cackled to myself when I was reading this. Everything about the story was so unique. The characters, we got into the bare bones of what made these girls tick, their fears, how they work with each other, what makes them work, how they deal in stressful situations. It was amazing, and it felt so accurate to the characters that we grew up with. Shannon Hale did an amazing job with this, and she genuinely gave us a gift in the form of this book. My eyelashes are coming off. Then again, I kind of just took them straight out of the package and didn't put glue on them and just stuck them on my face, so that's really my fault. Sure, I hated that the monsters were second generation and not first generation, because I would have loved to see more Claudine and Cleo. But Hale did an amazing job with what she had, and I stopped caring halfway through that these are second generation characters and not the Monster High characters that I grew up with. She just wrote them so well that it didn't matter. It felt like the original Frankie and Draculaura. The way Frankie and Draculaura were everything I wanted from the Monster High series that I reviewed. This book is a love letter to Monster High and Ever After High, and it does so well with the source material, and it really shows through Hale's writing. The tone of this video kind of shifted to being depressing very quick, but I can't help it. I love these franchises. They mean so much to me, and even though this book was amazing, they deserved more of a send-off. Like I said, I didn't know this was a book until you guys told me, so I can't imagine how many Monster High, Ever After High fans are out there not knowing that this is a thing. I know I just revealed like the entire plot of it, but if you guys are interested, please get it. It's so funny, it's such a fun read, and it's so worth it. Ever After High may be dead, but like I said earlier, Monster High is trying very hard not to be and trying to crawl back into the world of relevancy. Honestly, they might succeed because the new generation of dolls looks very cute, and I want the Draculaura one very bad. Legend of Shadow High was a great book, and it was the ending that Ever After High deserved, even if it wasn't a big spectacular movie like I would have preferred. And that was The Legend of Shadow High, and the last piece of Ever After High media we're ever gonna get. This book was such a fun read, and I thank you guys so much for introducing me to it. Really, I would not have known it was a thing if I was not told about it. Like I said, if you guys are interested in this book, please, please buy it. It's on Amazon. Buy it, put it in your collection, read it, have fun with it like I did. It's kind of really bittersweet, you know? Like, the series ended so long ago in 2016, but I'm now reading this and I'm kind of mourning Ever After High all over again. And mourning the old Monster High in general. I mean, we're never gonna get it like it was, even if we do get a new movie. It's sad, but all good things come to an end, and the book did a great job of it. And that's that on that. I really hope to be making more videos on this channel because it's fun and I love hearing myself talk. If you guys have any suggestions of what I should read next or maybe even watch next, let me know because I am very eager and willing this summer to do more with this channel and to produce more content. This was fun and I hope you had fun too. I'm Adriana and I thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Go watch some Monster High movies, go watch some Ever After High movies, and just revel in that gorgeous, gorgeous nostalgia. I'm ending the video now so I can eagerly rip these eyelashes off. Okay, goodbye.